Hello, and welcome to Unhacked. It is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and nobody sent me flowers yet. I'm Brian Graff, Senior Vice President of Business Development here at Abacode, and I'm here to take you through a hack of the week. Every week, we'll tell you the who, the what, the when, and the where of the most recent security events and key takeaways that you can take to help keep these events from happening to you. So today on Unhacked, another hospital group gets hacked, and what do you do once the hack has already occurred? So Universal Health Services, or UHS, which is one of the largest providers of healthcare services in the country, with over 400 locations and 90,000 employees, was hit with a ransomware attack or some kind of attack last week. We actually don't have a whole lot of information on this attack, but it's newsworthy just because of the size of the organization. So Universal Health Services reported that there was a security incident last week. Over the weekend, some of their personnel had to resort to using paper records to administer healthcare services to patients. And as of last reporting, there were still some services that were still down. So what's interesting about this is that UHS actually warned in its annual report last year that a cybersecurity incident could jeopardize their HIPAA compliance and cause significant financial and reputation damage. So these organizations are aware of this threat, aware that it is an existential threat to your organization, to the point where they're warning shareholders about it. Now, we're not really sure how the attacker got in. According to UHS, they said they used a commonly used vector to apply the attack, so it doesn't appear to be anything novel or new, but we don't know exactly what payload was used or what ransomware, who was the culprit either. Since we don't have a lot of information on it, it's kind of hard to gauge UHS's response to it. So they said that they have resorted to using paper records, which is not normally what an organization wants to do. So without any information on their monitoring and their incident response process, we don't know if this was something that was planned. Do they have an incident response and business continuity plan that tells their healthcare services employees, okay, if something goes down or EHR goes down, just go ahead and use paper records and we'll get the services back up within 72 hours or something like that? Or were they just kind of caught unaware and paper records were the only way to go? We're not really sure, since we don't know what their planned processes would be. Cybersecurity programs, they don't, just because they got breached, it doesn't mean that they don't have a robust cybersecurity program in place, because those programs aren't going to prevent attacks from occurring. You're going to get attacked over and over every day. What a cybersecurity program does is help you detect those attacks and mitigate the damage, so it's only on a workstation or on a server and it's not entity-wide. So UHS, gets the call. They get breached. Some of their systems are down. Many companies find themselves in this situation. Whether you have put a plan in place, if you have a cybersecurity program, if you have a security department with dedicated personnel, a lot of companies eventually are going to find themselves in this dilemma. So you've been breached, some of your systems are down, or maybe you've gotten a note from a ransomware gang saying that they've exfiltrated some of your data. So what do you do? So just like planting a tree, the best time to implement cybersecurity is in the past. The second best time is today. So even if you've just been breached, I implore you to call an expert, call someone, and just get some consulting. You may not actually use their services if you have security personnel in place, but especially if you do not, there's a lot of ins and outs when it comes to responding to any sort of hack, be it ransomware, exfiltration, anything like that. It's not just restarting systems, it's not just restoring the database, and it's not just paying the ransom. There are a lot of different ins and outs and aspects of responding to a breach. So before you even respond to a breach, and a lot of organizations, this is unfortunately one of the number one questions we get. We get calls from organizations that are already suffering a breach, and they want to know how to move forward. Well, before you even move forward, you have to answer three questions, and that's what is called, digital forensics and incident response. That first step is the forensics piece. So that's one of the services we offer here at Abacode, and what we're trying to do even before we move forward with the plan, because we can't without this information. So what we're trying to determine is, A, how did the hacker get in? Did they use a network vulnerability? Was it a phishing attack? Was it an insider? That determines how we respond to this threat and to prevent it from happening in the future. Are the hackers still in your network? Are they still performing exfiltration? Are they still causing trouble? That obviously will change how you respond to an incident if it's still occurring. If it's not occurring, then you can take steps to remediate. You can quarantine, but if the hack is still occurring, then you might need to take more drastic steps. And finally, we need to determine, what did the hackers access, what did they steal, and what did they touch. So that is past looking. So what holes are in your perimeter and in your internal network? That's the first component, which is we detect by vulnerability scanning. So we're trying to determine how they got in, so we can patch that hole up so it doesn't happen in the future. And if that attacker is planning on coming back, or they are persisting, we at least patch up that gap so that they can't access your system in that way. So that's done via scans, Tenable.io or Qualys. We'll run an external vulnerability scan and an internal credential scan and determine from the perimeter, what can hackers see? What can they, if they can probe your external network with a discovery scan? Are there ports open that shouldn't be open? Are there web services that are responding that shouldn't? Because those are going to be what a hacker's going to look for in terms of getting a foothold in your network. So once you do those scans and we have those output reports, we report to our customers that you have these vulnerabilities. We need to patch them according to a schedule, and then we move forward with the next steps. So we also determine whether the hackers are still in there. So part of our digital forensics and IR services include a CyberLorca POC. So we will install a SIM and we will monitor it for 2 weeks as we're doing our digital forensics investigation. So if there's any unusual activity, we can establish a baseline and determine whether there's someone from the outside connecting in a way they shouldn't be, or if there's someone on the inside that is touching something, a database or a service that they shouldn't be. We can now see what's going on inside the network and make those determinations, determine if the attack is still ongoing, which it sounds like that should be pretty straightforward and obvious, but it not always is, especially with the level of sophistication with some of these ransomware exploits and these packages. They can set up backdoors. They know how to stay quiet. They know not to touch things that are going to give them away. So it's not completely obvious that an attack is still going on. So with our CyberLorca POC, we implement a SIM and we have 24-hour monitoring. We correlate logs and determine whether security events are occurring. And then finally, in order to respond, you have to know what was stolen. So we also run a digital forensics tool that is past looking. It will look at your metadata, your unsecured data, your unclassified data, and try to determine whether a bad agent has touched that data file to give us a handle on what was stolen, what they were after. And that will also help us determine what access paths were taken. Depending on the type of industry that you're in, the type of data that you store and process, if something was stolen, let's say you are a healthcare services organization and PHI was stolen, there are specific HIPAA breach notification compliance requirements that you have to comply with. So you have to notify patients if their data was stolen. You have to let them know within a certain time frame. If you have, even if it's not customer data, but it's C2C data, if you have a web application that takes other companies' information over the web, let's say you do payroll or something like that, There's probably something in the agreement where if you've detected an incident that affects their data, you have to notify them within a set period of time. And the personnel that are responding to this incident may not always know what was agreed to in agreements and with your vendors, with your customers. So making sure that A, you know what was stolen, B, you know how to respond and what your requirements are is part of digital forensics and incident response, and even getting you to the point where you can begin to remediate. So all that has to happen day one: digital forensics and incident response. You have to know what those three. You have to know those three things before you even move forward. So once we have a list of your outstanding vulnerabilities, we can say for sure that the breach is not still ongoing, and we can determine exactly what was stolen. We can begin a remediation path moving forward. So if you don't already have a patching program, what we are going to recommend is that you have a set of policies and procedures written up if you don't already have them, or we will do a review if you do, and make sure that there are processes in place that your network and your web applications are being scanned frequently for vulnerabilities, and that they're being patched according to a schedule. Instituting SIM and VSOC on a permanent basis to make sure that if something does occur, you detect it immediately in real time, and you stop a one component breach from becoming a network-wide or entity-wide breach. That's where you want to get to, and really the only way to do that is to implement a SIM and have security analysts monitoring it 24 hours a day. Also, we would want to implement a security program according to a compliance standard. So there's no need for you to have to determine the 120, 130 different security mechanisms and processes in order to maintain a secure program. All those are already written out for you in the several different compliance standards, and depending on what industry you're on, there's an industry accepted standard that you can apply to your organization and start building your program, and we can help you do that. Beyond that, we're probably going to determine that there was some form of user error that occurred, which allowed this breach to happen. Either someone clicked on an email that they weren't supposed to, or someone didn't configure something the way that they were supposed to. So in almost every case, there was almost always a process breakdown along with a technology breakdown. Somebody didn't do something they were supposed to do. And that's where security awareness training comes in. You have to make sure that everyone in your organization understands that security is their responsibility. If they are standing up a server, it's their responsibility to stand it up securely. If I have access to email, it's my responsibility to safeguard those credentials and monitor my email. If I see something weird happening, if I see in my sent box that emails were sent that I didn't send, you have to tell your supervisor, because that means your account has possibly been taken over. So letting your employees know that this is part of their responsibility, and we're counting on them to report these incidents really helps in terms of preventing the next attack from becoming entity-wide. So that's all we have today for Unhacked. Again, if you like this information, please like and subscribe. For Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we're going to be sending out tips all month on how you can improve your security posture, establish a security program, get through compliance audits. If you have any further questions about any of the information that I provided, please email me, contact Abacode. You can go to our website and submit a question there. You can respond in the comments, although I don't read the comments on this, but I'm sure somebody will get to you eventually. And I'll see you next Thursday on Unhacked.